Everybody, how you doing? Welcome back to our space. Today we've got some stories from the children's point of view about some messed up relationships with their parents. Let's see how it goes. First up, I got pregnant at 16 and my parents disowned me. Now they want to see my daughter 10 years later. At 16, I slept with my good friend Chad. The condom broke and my daughter was created. My parents, who were great until this point, didn't like that and wanted me to get an abortion. I couldn't bring it over myself to. I wanted to keep the baby. Of course, my parents told me to pack my stuff and leave the house and their life. So I did. I went to my friend's house and his parents took me in. They weren't thrilled, but they said that we all had to help as a new family member was in the making. In that time, my friend and I started to develop feelings for each other. I had my daughter, and about 2 months later, Jared's brother came back into their life. He was a recovering heroin addict. As we had the baby, my mother-in-law told him he could not stay with us. Eventually, they let him stay more and more, and he was spending nights until he had a relapse and stole a bunch of stuff. My parents got wind of that. They dug up a bunch of stuff and found out my mother-in-law also fought addiction. After an accident she had 15 years ago, left her addicted to pain meds. So they called CPS on us, and a whole investigation was opened. It was a dark time. I thought they were going to take my baby. In the end, it didn't find anything substantial. But them calling CPS on me transformed into a tradition over the years. As it was a small town, every mistake I made got back to my parents. I was a half hour late to pick up due to my job, CPS charges because of neglect. I was out after 10 p.m. with my toddler, this happened twice because we went to family gatherings, CPS. Christmas, loads of people stayed at Jared's house because it was a big family, CPS because many strange men were there. They eventually stopped it because they were fined for calling him on me unnecessarily. If they had done it more, I think it could have been an offense. The last call was 5 years ago. Eventually, Jared and I married when we were 23, and we are quite happy. We worked retail jobs and studied. It took us longer than average to graduate, but we did. With a lot of help from his parents. Jared is now an engineer, and I work as a graphic designer. We were able to afford a big flat and finally moved out of his parents' house. Our lives look normal now. Anyway, a week ago, I get a call from my mother, who told me my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer and that his ultimate wish is to see me and my daughter again. I don't really know what to do, because while they didn't have to take care of me while I was pregnant, I wish they had at least supported me. And while I get that they were panicking because they thought I was going to be an unfit mother, they made my life hell for 5 years. Before we get the update, I just want to say, OP, that your parents need to reconcile with you before you even consider letting them see your daughter, and whether or not that's even possible is entirely up to you. What you describe them as is controlling, manipulative, and selfish. Until you have determined that it is no longer the case, I would keep your daughter far away from them. Okay, enough about me. On to the update. After some thought, I decided to meet my parents alone. I wanted to make a decision based on their remorse and development as human beings. And they sadly didn't really change. When I agreed to meet, I also told them I would be without my kid. I don't know why, but they thought they were going to meet her. They had bought presents and all. They were very disappointed, to say it lightly, when I showed up without her. They made no deal to hide it. But we talked. They failed to take any real responsibility for their actions. Every apology began with, "We are sorry if you." When confronted about CPS calls, they said they were doing what was best for my daughter. I got really mad, but tried not to snap. They brought up every mistake I did as a young mother, and that they just thought I was far too young and irresponsible to have a kid. That daughter only turned up good because of luck. After they said that, I laid down money for my meal, stood up and said, "Well, nothing has changed. You are still the heartless persons that threw me out years ago and made my life hell for 5 years. You will never meet her. She is happy, and she has loving grandparents." They started to freak out, saying that I couldn't withhold their grandchild from them. I just said that you lay in the bed you make. I left and haven't talked to them since. Mails or letters from them are thrown out on the spot. I will eventually explain to my daughter what happened to me and my parents, and will give her the chance to meet them when she is older, but for now, I don't want to deal with their BS. Also, yes, my daughter is in therapy due to her being traumatized by all that lovely CPS visits that were caused by my parents. I'm glad you stood up to your parents, OP. They don't deserve that luxury of being in your daughter's life. I doubt they will ever change, but I agree it should be up to your daughter if she wants to see them later in life. It truly is a shame that they have forced her into therapy at such a young age for such a ridiculous reason. I think you made the right decision, and I wish you the best of luck in the future. All right, next up, we've got another fun story with parents. Am I the a-hole for not wanting my parents to be a part of my daughter's life? When I was 18, my parents kicked me out of the house after I got my girlfriend pregnant. To them, it was shameful, and they completely cut me out of their lives and my family's money. My girlfriend and I managed on our own after my son was born, but it was a struggle for years. We were living paycheck to paycheck and constantly stressed about money. My girlfriend's parents helped out when they could, and were the best grandparents to our son. By some miracle, we managed to graduate from college even with work and raising a child. Now we're both 32, then married 6 years, living in our own home with our 13-year-old son and our 4-month-old daughter. I haven't seen or spoken to anyone in my family except my cousins in years. 2 weeks ago, my mom sent me a friend request on Facebook and also messaged me. She sent this long message about how she's wanted to talk for a while now, and she apologized for the way they treated me. She and my dad were hoping we can make amends because they really want to meet my new daughter and get the chance to be grandparents. She didn't mention my son at all, ask how old he is, how he's doing, or express any interest whatsoever in also wanting to see him, not just my daughter. I messaged her back and vented about all the hardships and obstacles my girlfriend and I had to deal with to get to where we are, and how hard it was that I didn't have my parents' emotional support through what was the most difficult time of my life. Sure, their money would have made things a hell of a lot easier, but I get that money shouldn't be handed to us. But I feel the least they could have done was be there for me instead of erasing me from their lives. I said they don't get to walk back into our lives, and I don't want to hear from her again. I blocked her after that. A few days ago, one of my cousins mentioned my parents and said they're telling everyone I'm refusing to let them meet their granddaughter. My cousin knows about everything, but he thought it was still petty to be that way when they clearly regret what they did and want to be in my life now, and I can't allow a grudge to prevent them from being grandparents. My wife and I talked this over, and she feels the same way I do, but will support it if I want them around. It really feels like they only care now because we're older and the hard part is over. And honestly, my parents have always been extremely judgmental over everything. They're also very snobby, and I'm not 100% sure if that's what I want my kids growing up with. My cousin keeps saying I'm in the wrong here, and it's hurting my parents that they'll miss out on my daughter's first year of life by not being around. I'm just a little lost, and I don't know if I really am being the bad guy or not. Not the a-hole. Why now? Why only your daughter? I get that people can grow, but in that growth, are they planning to pretend your son is still a shameful secret? Family is more than blood. They are the people who stand by you, with you, and behind you in good and bad times. The fact that your mom immediately went with woe was me, I'm the victim, they won't let me, etc., to everyone says a lot to me. She isn't even planning to put in some work to try and heal the rift that she allowed to grow. In case it's unclear, I support your decision 100%. And now for our last story, the quick one. My dad remarried when I was 8, a few years after my mom passed away. I thought we were close, and I had a decent relationship with my stepmom, 55, and my stepsister, 27, until this all went down. My stepsister and her husband have a 3-year-old daughter. When our parents found out she was expecting, they went all out. They let them move in with them, paid and did everything to set up a nursery, hosted a baby shower, etc. When they found out I was pregnant, my dad was incredibly cold and barely asked me about my health or the baby. Meanwhile, he was all over his step-granddaughter. The only nice thing they did for me was send me the baby blanket my mom embroidered for me when my son was born. They only came to see him after a whole month and barely tried to visit after that, and would make excuses when I tried to visit them. I got pregnant from a one-night stand during an event I went to with my best friend. I had no idea who the dad was aside from a first name. When my family shunned me, I became obsessed with figuring out who the dad was. It took a lot of internet stalking and a whole month before I finally found his contact info. By this time, I was already 5 months pregnant. He was shocked when he found out, but insisted. He wanted to be a part of his child's life. We started dating, living together full-time when our son was 9 months. I've withdrawn a lot from my family, and so I never introduced them to my boyfriend. However, my grandmother has met him and insisted I include him during our video chats. A month ago, my dad was over at hers whilst she was video chatting me. She wanted to see our son, who was playing with his dad. So I asked him to bring him over. My dad saw him and started asking questions. Who he was, what his job was, how long we've been together, etc. I tried to be vague, but I'm assuming my grandmother told him everything because he started asking me why I never told him I knew who the father was and why I never introduced him to him. I told him I didn't think he would care. Ever since, he's been asking non-stop to come see my son. My stepmother and stepsister have all asked to come over too. My stepsister sent me a long message about how she hopes her children will be as close as us and we should set up play dates. I really don't know what to do now. On one hand, I want my son to know his family, but I'm also very bitter that they only want to know him now that they know who his dad is. I really don't know what to do now, so any advice on how to proceed would be helpful. They have made it clear that they don't offer unconditional love. What they are offering your son is the same kind of love they have shown to you. It's not irrational or better to be a bit cautious about letting them get close to your son so he's attached to them, only to one day turn around and treat him the way they treated you. Concentrate on providing a good life for your child. It's fine for him to meet that side of his family when you're ready. But don't buy into this sudden forced closeness thing. See what is really in an offer for what it is. A bit of camaraderie and shared experiences, not deep loyalty. They have shown you what kind of people they really are, and no amount of apologizing or hearing how you feel can change that. Good luck.